Hello, everybody. I'm Candid Stanisci. Thank you for joining our program here. And today's program is CFL Talk. Welcome to the Spanglish World Network on Zingo TV, channel 250. Please remember to download the Zingo TV app at the respective app stores for iOS and Android devices. While you download the app, make sure you rate and leave a comment. Both apps are absolutely free. Zingo TV is available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire TV Sticks, Roku Sticks, and also on all smart TVs 2016 forward. And don't forget to subscribe to Candid Stanisci 1030 on YouTube. Now on CFL Talk, the brains of the operation, David Morassutti.
Oi, I always say if I'm relied on as the brains of the operation, we're asking for a lot.
I think it's less about you, more about me.
How are you doing?
Good. Well, first of all, on a sad note, the Calgary Stampeders have notified everyone that there was a death in their family, the football family, and that was Bruce Cumberton. He was 57. Our condolence to him and his family. He was only 57. Notice I said only 57. For me, that's only 57. For some, that might be different, but for me, it's only. And you know, it's something. It's something that we all have to deal with, and I'm sorry to see that him and his family will have to. He dying and his family suffering his loss.
It's always unfortunate, you know, to lose someone, you know, at that stage, and just didn't. It seemed like it was a sudden thing too. So we definitely feel for the family, feel for the whole organization too.
Yeah, it's very, you know, very family oriented. The other thing is on a not as dire as that is the fact that Ed Gainey, it seems he's got a trend. He joins teams every 2 years, and he's there for 2 years and then moves on. Well, his 2 years are up in Edmonton, and he's moving on. I'm getting a sense. I don't know about you, David, but I really get the feeling that the Elks are not cleaning house. I'm not suggesting they're cleaning house, but I am suggesting they're creating a void in their leadership. And I think possibly because coming down the pipe will be a new group of veteran players that will provide the leadership for this franchise. And to help, I guess, you know, everybody talks about culture change. So I'll just go with it. There's a culture change in the Edmonton Elks future. What do you think?
I do think, you know, when you've gone through what you've gone through and you want to, I would say when you're trying to go with some younger players in different positions, you want to make sure that they have the right culture. They're brought into the right culture, right? And again, we've seen it, Frank, and we've witnessed it, just how important it is to have the right players leading the charge. And I think in the Elks situation, yeah, they're looking at what they currently have, you know, in terms of their leadership, and say, do we need to make changes here? They already made a big one, right? McLeod Bethel Thompson, your quarterback. Exactly. That's a big change right there. We already knew that was going to happen, and I think.
You can throw in the number one receiver there for them as well. Somebody that I think they're going to consider high up in the food chain and receivers out.
Of course. So yeah, I do think that when you go through what you've gone through as a franchise, change is inevitable in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and it's all about under new management, right? You have new management, and that new management is going to, you know, bring people in, and we're talking about Corey Mace, the ex-defensive coordinator of the Toronto Argonauts, now the head coach. Sorry, what am I talking about? They're going with a new attitude. My goodness, they're going with a new attitude, and that started at the end of last year. Chris Jones now has to figure things out and make some big decisions, and those decisions right now, I don't know that he has another year after this that he'll be the GM and coach of this team.
Well, he has two different, if I'm not mistaken, there's two different contracts. There's one for his head coach and one for his general manager position, if I'm not wrong. But I do believe that he's going to be there for a little bit. Like, it's not like this is our make or, I mean, it could be a make or break season, but I don't think for Chris Jones, I think I think they were trying to commit to something for a while because I think Chris Jones was here for 4 years. I think it was a 4-year
Yep.
contract that he signed in 2021.
I understood there were a series of one-year contracts.
Yeah, I think it was just the way that it was all broken down. But
Mhm.
I think his deal, his time is until after the 2025 season. So that would be 2 more seasons.
Right. But I really think that if they remain on this plateau of not making the playoffs,
Mhm.
or at least not making a good run for the playoffs. And here's the tough part for them, and I don't know how much sympathy the organization above him will have, but the teams in the West are getting tougher and better. I see 4 teams there fighting for 3 playoff spots. 4 teams that are going to be very close. And can Edmonton join that group? I haven't lost faith in Calgary. Of course, they're probably the team that I would say stands the most to lose with the improvement that we both predict will happen in Saskatchewan. We predict that, right? That Saskatchewan's going to improve.
Yeah, no, yeah,
You know what I mean?
no, for sure, right? Um, i- when you got a new president, right, coming into the fold too, he's gonna look. I think for him, the important thing is you're gonna give him the year. You're gonna at least give Chris Jones this year.
Right.
If you notice that there's no progress, it's an easy call for him to say this isn't working. We need to change things up. So I think for Edmonton, that's the best option. Cleaning house, I understand why people wanted it this year, but when you look at the coaching cap and management cap and how it all structures out, you have to. It's not an easy said than done sort of thing.
I think the league is they've gotten a little more free with what goes on in that regard because it really does. The problem is that you can't have a team handcuffed. It's like 2 quarterbacks go down and you tell a team they can't bring any other quarterbacks, and you don't do that. That creates a real problem with competition, and competition hurts every team, not just so a poor coach's cap anywhere affects every team the same and affects a team very negatively, as we've seen, right? So they've got to do something to mitigate that instantaneous and permanent or long duration of failure by a team, because that's not good for the league.
No, it's not. It's not good for the league. And when you have teams that look, there's teams that can be bad, but for how long Edmonton has been bad, what it means for them to, again, some can say, well, you can't expect every team to be good. It's how long they've been not good for, and what it means to them to not have fans show up to games.
Absolutely. I'll move on with free agency. Just an idle comment. You can tag on as you wish. Free agency is in less than a month. We should start. We should start hearing some stuff and get an understanding of the players. This is I think, the part of the year where we're going to start seeing contracts going to players on teams, because now it gets down to the point where if you're going to sign that player, you got to do it before free agency, because once free agency happens, the numbers go a little bit higher.
Of course, it's always
And then
that.
there's that downside after free agency's around for a while. So there's 2 opportunities here to keep your players. But do you want to risk losing them when they go into free agency? If
Well,
they
that's
survive free agency, you might be able to get them for less money.
well. Here's the thing, teams fans should realize there's been a lot of times where free agents have gone on to other teams. There's an initial process where you're like, it sucks that they're not coming back. But in the CFL, I give front offices, scouts a lot of credit because they find guys, they find players. It's not easy to plug and play players. I get that, but in the CFL, they do a really good job of that.
Well, football's a pretty good game to be able to do a good job of it. There are a lot of football players around, but still, bringing it. It's not just about bringing in great players or good players, even. It's about bringing in the right players. Because of the league and because of what it is. You can't just bring anybody into the Canadian Football League and go, all right, it's predictable who's going to be good, because one thing I believe, there is some predictability with some players, but there's also a group of players that come to the Canadian Football League and establish themselves, not necessarily as a surprise, but they do sit on the practice roster for a little while, and then they get a chance to play, and they prove that it was a good decision.
Yeah, and I mean, look, right now, it's teams have been signing players, right? Especially college free agents. We're talking here about the established CFL players, right? Because unfortunately, yeah, the scouts can look at these players all they want. They are not sure A, how these players will fit their system, and B, how long it will take them to adjust. We always hear from the American players how long it takes them to adjust to the Canadian game, because they've only known the American game all their lives.
Yep, the adjustment is plenty. Well, we call this in the off season of the Canadian Football League. This is our football show. So there is another football league that's playing now, and I can still hear the cries just south of the border in Buffalo. Shall we start with that?
Yeah, let's
start with that.
Let's start. I have a lot of thoughts on it.
Let's start with the Bills losing to the Chiefs, and they did it not only in old-fashioned ways, they found new ways to lose games historically by Buffalo, who have a very poor. Oh, they have such a poor history when it comes to the playoffs. Now, mind you, when they went to the Super Bowl 4 straight times, but they lost each and every one. What are the odds of that? Making it to the Super Bowl 4 times and ending up with an offer. And then they end up with a quarterback who looked like he was going to destroy the opposition in the first half. It didn't quite work out that way.
Well, here's the thing. Everyone was talking about everybody was getting ready to write off the Kansas City Chiefs during the year. And
they did stumble a little bit, which made it easier for people to write them off.
Yes. But here's the thing. What do the Kansas City Chiefs have that the Buffalo Bills don't have? It's the playoff success.
Absolutely.
It's players knowing how to make the plays when the pressure is on them. And I think when you look at how this game went for Buffalo, you could take risks as a team. You need to be smart about it. Okay? Our producer Eduardo is saying smart. Yes, the Buffalo wasn't smart in a lot of situations, but they weren't getting plays. When I saw they put up a graphic during the game, Patrick Mahomes had made like 8 plays of over 20 plus yards, something like that. Buffalo had 0. When Josh Allen was trying to take those shots down the field and he gave his players chances to make plays, and they couldn't make plays, I said, I don't like their chances. I don't like their chances to win this because they weren't able to make those plays. That's what makes or breaks in any game. Josh Allen made some good plays in this game, but he could not, in the critical moments, make the play. And it wasn't all Josh Allen's fault.
Yeah, good, because you're not hanging it on him.
No, and you know what? I listened to ESPN First Take. They're a fantastic program, especially if you want to debate things. But poor Dan Orlovsky here trying to defend Josh Allen. And look, in a way, it was a bit of a losing argument because when the quarterback loses, it's easy to put it on them and things like that. But when your players are not making plays for you, that team still had a chance to go to overtime. He put his kicker in a good position to make a field goal. Problem was, Josh Allen can't kick the football. Josh Allen can't. Remember all those years ago when the Patriots lost, I think it was to the Eagles or the Giants in the Super Bowl. I can't remember which one. And Giselle, his wife, came out and said, my husband can't throw and catch a ball at the same time. Because a lot of people are blaming Tom Brady for the Super Bowl loss. Or it would have been a playoff loss. It was a loss in the playoffs. I can't remember which one exactly.
I think it was at the end of his tenure in New England.
It could have been. And to me, what it shows there is the same thing that Josh Allen is going through right now. He can't do everything. And I always blamed people who say it was Josh Allen's fault. He can't get it done. No, he gave them a really good chance to win that game. They were winning the game for most of it. There were players not getting things done. Was it Josh Allen's fault that his team decided on a 4th and 5 in
I
their own
I,
end to go for a fake punt?
I cannot believe that. Two things: the idea and the execution. Take it, Dave.
You could tell that team did not know how to execute that play. They might have practiced it, but Kansas City knew what to do. That was a well coached special teams move by that Kansas City Chiefs team to not fall for that fake. And if it wasn't for that fumble in the end zone by Hardman, that would have been they would have easily have been up by at least 10 points and had that game put away.
And I don't think either of those things belong to.
Look, yes, did Josh Allen not make plays? There were times where he didn't make plays. But there were a lot of times where Josh Allen should have had a play made and his team could not come away with the play.
Any one of those things we just discussed, the 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 fatal 3rd and 5 at their 30, I think it was it their 30 they were at? Just past their 30, I think. That, the drop balls, and what you just said right now. That Josh Allen is not to blame. Those throws he made, while they smack of desperation, that they smell of desperation. But for me, I'm not sure it's Josh Allen's desperation. That was his idea to do that. But I do think that he did a good job in making the balls catchable, right? And the first half was totally different. The Bills receivers could not drop a ball. They could, and there were some balls there that were harder to catch than the ones they missed in the second half. It was a tale of two halves for their receivers. I don't know whether, in hockey we refer to squeezing the sticks too hard, or in football trying to squeeze the ball too hard instead of making it just an easy catch. The old story of, is he running first and then catching? Or is he catching and then running? Like all these little technical things that receivers have to do. And it isn't about talent, because they did all that stuff in the first half. All of a sudden, as a team, they couldn't stop the run game. They did better in the first half. They couldn't catch a ball, and they couldn't make, the coaching staff couldn't make good decisions. They weren't good because they failed. They can be a good decision, but when you chalk it all up and go, hey, what it adds up to failure. And that's all that matters. They had so many failures, and that fumbled ball was a perfect example of, the only thing worse would have been an interception. That's what that rises to an interception. That's basically a receiver trying to go for an extra foot and giving away the whole football field, giving it away. And we know in football, it's all about field position. And it gave Kansas City a team that you said, and you're 100% right, that knows how to win. They also know how to take advantage of mental failures by their opposition and then kick it into a gear that just finishes burying the opposition. And that's what they did.
Yeah, you pretty much nailed it there. You give them a chance. You give Patrick Mahomes ample opportunities. It's going to take advantage, right? The worst thing you can do when you go up against a good quarterback like a Patrick Mahomes is you make the mistakes, right? What mistakes did Patrick Mahomes make? Right? Like, you see a difference between what the Bills were doing, and people keep saying, what do the Bills need to do? What do the Bills need to do? Don't shoot yourself in the foot. Now, is that coaching? Could be. This is the first year where you could have made a serious case for a coaching change. And I do wonder if Buffalo considers it, considering what happened this year. But, I'm sorry to say, but Patrick Mahomes did not throw an interception. He didn't fumble the football. his players didn't, and his players were guilty of not coming through for him. And that, I think, is the I do think that's the difference. Now,
Absolutely.
Josh
And
Allen didn't make many mistakes. He missed plays, but he didn't make any mistakes, but his team did.
yeah, no, he gave his receivers a chance to win the game. He gave his coaching staff an opportunity, and especially the head coach, an opportunity to design a game to win. You know, he did all he had to do. He ran in for 2 touchdowns, you know, and he was, I think it was probably, and I think most people agree, it was the most patient half I've seen out of that guy. That first half was the most patient half I've seen out of him, where he didn't force anything.
Yeah.
The second half changed. Why did it change? Because of coaching, in my opinion, errors. Because if the head coach makes a call like that, going, 3rd and 5, and he makes that decision, he's saying they can do it. Well, they didn't. He was wrong. His mistake. So this is unfortunate for Buffalo fans, of which I know quite a few. I sat with a couple of Buffalo fans and watched the game about 7-8 years ago, maybe 9. I for whatever reason, going back to the old days, Dawson and company at KC, I decided to make them my team. So now I'm sitting in a place full of Buffalo fans, watching the team that I'm pulling for winning the game, and I'm looking around because there's no other KC fans, so there won't be any big celebrations by Frank. And it was horrible. And to watch Buffalo fans say, "Uh-oh, it's going to happen again." And then I see the field goal that was missed. We haven't even talked about that yet. The most famous phrase that eats the inside of every Buffalo football fan: wide right. The tradition continues.
I do think, again, kickers people rag on kickers a lot. The elements play a factor, but that is so much pressure.
Oh,
So much pressure. I don't care who you are. You can't tell me that when you're a kicker and your only job is to kick the football and you get one chance at the end of the game and you're waiting and when you have time to think about a play, it usually doesn't go well. That's why we rave about the kickers of like Adam Vinatieri, who you call them in the moment and they can kick it. Even like the Justin Tucker, moment calls, you just get it done. And to me, that's a sign of between a good kicker and a NFL kicker and a Hall of Fame kicker. I mean, kickers usually you don't really see kickers get into the Hall of Fame all the time. But I think if you're Buffalo, don't go after the kicker. And I know if you saw, he had to delete all of his social media. Fortunately, some fans decided let's make sure that we don't spin this just as a negative situation. And they rallied together, got some money, and donated towards, I believe it was a cat shelter, because Tyler Bass has a history with them. And so, yeah, I do feel bad for the kicker. I also am like, yeah, I can get what people are saying. It's their job to kick, but I'm sorry. You go into that situation of the game. You try to deal with what they deal with in terms of the pressure. I don't know if many people can.
Well, if I can create a tiny little analogy, the kicker was hanging by his fingernails. He was put in a terrible position where he shouldn't have been put. He shouldn't, that game should not have hinged on a field goal. No way was that game for the Buffalo Bills. If you look at each different situation and circumstance where they failed the team, the group, areas of the team failed the team as a whole. He failed. He failed in tying the game.
Yes.
But you know what? There's about four other incidents that we've already discussed that take priority of that because everything we talked about would have led to touchdowns, of which a field goal is irrelevant. The touchdown would have won the game. They would have been able to win the game, and the field goal would have been padding if they had executed and done what they're supposedly practicing every day to do. They failed as a team. This was as close to a team collapse as it gets. So when Buffalo fans want to attack the kicker, there's a lot of people you can point to that caused points to come off the board. And 3 points did come off the board, but there's no less than 21 points came off the board that they could have had easily, not with much of a struggle to get. There were at least 3 touchdowns they could have had if they had done what, even just part of what they did in the first half. The second half was a total failure as a team, and we can only talk about the quarterback in the sense that he's part of the team, but I wouldn't isolate him on any of the issues and the reasons this team lost.
Yeah, I think the big one here, and what I will say to Buffalo is don't pile on. I understand that this is a soft. I'm a Cowboys fan. I've been cheering for the Cowboys since 2002. I've been through it all. The Tony Romo fumbling of the snap for the field goal. I've been the Des Bryant catch that wasn't a catch. Been through it all. Don't let this overcome your emotions. It's not healthy, first and foremost. And two, I think Josh Allen will get it, but he needs the supporting cast around him. Patrick Mahomes has always had the supporting cast around him.
Yeah.
It just wasn't your year, and it wasn't your year. Honestly, it wasn't your year because you saw during the season that things were not going well. Injuries, players not playing well. You fired your offensive coordinator. This wasn't the year to think you guys had this chance. I'm sorry. I look at the Baltimore Ravens. You want to look at how a team does things right? Go look at the Baltimore Ravens. And this is why I think I'm leaning more towards thinking about a coaching change, because I look at what Baltimore's done. Yes, there's been continuity from John Harbaugh and for how long he's been there, but that team they don't make the mistakes that Buffalo made. Simply don't.
Yeah, no, they don't. Well, the Buccaneers and Lions, the next team I want to talk about, because I think the Lions are probably a really good story. There was this story, Lions, Bills, Lake Erie battle. That was all, like, everybody was talking about that. And as it turned out, it's not going to happen. And it was going to be a big story. Now, the biggest story, I think, before we leave the Buffalo Chiefs one, is the amount of people that actually watched that game.
Oh, yeah.
It was an incredible amount, head and shoulders above many other playoff games. It was incredible. And I don't know if that was her fans that made it. They had an extra 4 million viewers.
So it was the most watched NFL divisional game ever. The first to surpass 50 million viewers. Last year's Cowboys was Cowboys 49ers, which pretty big markets there. So I think that if you're the NFL, if everyone says the NFL has, a bias, this game, the viewership kind of confirms that maybe not so much.
And maybe it isn't something you should try for, because it'd be surprised, right?
Exactly. I think it just reminds us how much of a powerhouse the NFL has become in terms of ratings and things like that, and what they do right. Look, the way their playoffs is set up, you got Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen going up against each other. everyone was billing this as the new Brady Manning rivalry, right? You know, to have these sort of matchups only adds to just how impressive the NFL has become as a product, really. And look, it was a good game. It wasn't a dud either.
No,
And
no,
that's
no,
the
not at
part
all.
that I think people need to remind. Yeah, a lot of people watched it, but it was a really good game. Came down to the wire.
A lot of people probably stayed on it, right? They probably stayed on
Exactly.
it. There was no reason to leave.
Yeah, it wasn't like, the wild card rounds where, you know, Team X was out of it in the first half. It wasn't like the Cowboys Packers game.
Well, that game had a quick start, but it was a quick start for both teams. That being the difference, right? That it wasn't one team starting off quick and the other one slow.
Exactly. Both teams were neither team punted until later, I think in the second half.
Right. Exactly. They didn't need to try any field goals. It was touchdown, 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 change of possession. So with the Buccaneers losing to the Lions, sorry about that going back to the Buffalo team, but the point was that a lot of people were anticipating and thinking it would be a great thing if it was Buffalo and the Lions playing in the Super Bowl. Well, the Lions can maintain that. Here's a team, long-suffering fans. Here's a team which, made a really good move. That looking back, now I don't know how many people thought Stafford going, trading him out and bringing in Goff. How many people thought that would be a good idea? But it really has worked out for them well, hasn't it?
Yeah, it has. Like, let's not forget Jared Goff when he was in LA. What made him work in LA after they thought they really screwed the pooch there when they drafted him was they got a good system around him, good players around him, and he went out. He followed the game plan to a T, and that's what he's doing in Detroit. Like, it's a true, yeah, this guy was cast away in a ways, but there was something there always. The guy went first overall for a reason.
Uh-huh.
Okay, you don't get this guy first overall if you don't think he has the ability to do what he's doing, right? And I think that's what people tend to forget. He's also the same age as me, Jared Goff. That makes me feel weird, but you know he's embodied the underdog story like the Lions have been all year, and I think that's a big part of I think what makes people think Detroit can really go far is that belief, right? We in a way, can I make the comparison between them and the Alouettes? Good pieces there, a team
And,
that nobody really
and they also
believes in.
play a really hard game. They
Yeah,
do play smash mouth football.
Smash Mouth, their coach is very outspoken, you know, throws a lot of support behind his players.
And coming out of nowhere,
Yeah.
right? I don't know if they'll be saying things like the Alouettes said if they make it to the Super Bowl. Nobody believed in us. Nobody thought we would make it.
I
Ever
think
got through the
I
worst.
think that's maybe the difference with the Lions is I think more people do believe in the Lions just because they're such a likable team
And
and
they
a likable fan base too.
yeah, they've made steady improvements year after year. This has been it wasn't uh, even I, who am not a full-time NFL fan, knew there was a good chance the Lions would do this. All you had to do was watch the way they played, watch their record, watch how consistent they are. All those things speak well to a team, and they did a lot of things right, and they didn't do many things that were wrong. And that's as important as doing things right. Yeah, no, I like this Lions team. Actually, the only book I've ever read, um, I think it was Paperback Hero, and I think it was about a lion player. So that's the only book I've read in sports. One of them, the only one I read in NFL. I can say that. And so this is the Paper Lion. This is a team that deserves where they are, and there are a lot of people pulling for them, and they're going to be in tough. They're going to be in tough against San Francisco. And
Oh,
I liked what they did in that game. They really, what they did is what Buffalo can't do: get in a position to win and win.
don't they didn't hand the game over to the Buccaneers. Buccaneers made a push. They tried to make a comeback, but they ended it. They thwarted it. Right. The worst thing you can do in the NFL is give an opening for another team to make a comeback. And I
Absolutely.
think for the Lions, they didn't do that. They had the ball at the end of the game, and they made the plays that they needed to make sure that that game was put away. Now there was the controversy of whether or not the Bucks used their timeouts properly, and if you know whether they also made the right play calls. But at the end, the Lions did not make this an easy game for the Bucks. The Bucks kept it going early, but the Lions they had that belief, and I didn't see that belief waver at all. And I think that to me is a strong characteristic you need in a championship team and a playoff team is that self belief, and you're not going to let. And look, they've been kicked down. I think look back at that game they lost against the Cowboys where there was the penalty called on the potential game-winning 2-point conversion and things like that. You it built if you learn from those moments, that's where I think good what separates the good from the great football teams.
And they played like they were at home. Another thing Buffalo didn't do.
Yes, they
They
did.
played like they were at home.
Now, that's where it changes. That's where this next game changes for them. They're not at home.
Right.
They and they're going up against
The best team in the NFC.
the best team in the NFC, but one that I wonder is there a little bit of vulnerability there?
There might be, but I also think there's a lot of um, this is a team that I believe remembers how they were kicked out of the playoffs last year. They were denied an opportunity to make it to the Super Bowl because of, unfortunately, injuries. I don't think they've forgotten that, David. I think that's something there's an intensity I think this team has. I know, you're a professional football player, you're in the NFL, you should be able to get, all ready to go, raring to play and be intense. But there are little helpful things that can happen, and one of them is history. In this case, the 49ers they have not forgotten their recent history. They have time to make up. But again, are the Lions, like you say, the Alouettes? Are they the team that will surprise an overwhelmingly? And I don't think it's an underestimation that San Francisco's an overwhelmingly favorite against Detroit.
I can tell you right now. We always look at the. I always
Oh,
look at the
yeah,
odds makers.
the gamblers are going to come to work now.
Yeah,
Here we
1 second here. The degenerate's coming up. Let's
I
see
hope
what's
I'm right.
so the Lions are favored by 7.
Wow.
Sorry. The Lions are 7-point underdogs. The
Oh, okay.
49ers are 7-point favorites.
That's better than I thought.
It's what I'm a little surprised. I thought maybe 4.5, 5, but to me 7 suggests again they're giving that home field advantage
Yeah.
real thing. 51 points is the over under, so pretty decent. They're not expecting this to be a low scoring game by any stretch. Um, I'll tell you this though, if people always ask me whether to take the spread on the 49ers, 49ers are 3-6 against the spread in
Wow.
home games this season. People they were 9.5 favorites on the Packers. The 49ers offensively were not good enough to win that game in my opinion against the Packers. The Packers should have won that game. The reason why I say that is there were plays there, dropped interceptions. You can't. The dropped interceptions they had against the 49ers were they made those plays against the Cowboys and they made the Cowboys pay for them. The Packers couldn't give Jordan Love the opportunities he needed to win that game.
Yep.
And Aaron Jones did something that no running back has been able to do in over 50 games against the 49ers. That was rush for more than 100 yards. So if I'm the Lions, I'm saying we can make those plays. We can make those interceptions. We can run the football. So, don't I look, the 49ers I think are going to be better. I think, they had the week off. There was a little bit maybe of rust there, but the Lions have that belief that they can make the plays that they need to make.
Yeah,
That's a good one.
and well deserved. It's well deserved. And yes, the Packers. But this is what always comes down to: the playoffs come down to the team that doesn't make mistakes beating the team that does. There aren't many. When you're playing at this level and this level of teams, you're talking about teams that don't make many mistakes. So when you do make a mistake, it's big. It's important. So yeah, congratulations to 49er fans. I know a couple of those too. They're sighing a breath of relief making it through to the final in the NFC. And then we've got the Baltimore Ravens and the Texans. The Texans, they weren't favored in this game at all. Baltimore played like they're at home, and they did a great job doing it.
Yeah, I mean, Baltimore, I'm having a really hard time thinking any team's going to knock off Baltimore right now. They are just solid everywhere on that roster. Lamar Jackson's looking like, the best version of Lamar Jackson right now. He's got the weapons around him. If they get Mark Andrews back, it makes them even more dangerous. Their defense, what they did to CJ Stroud put up over 40 points against the Cleveland Browns defense. That was a really good defense. And what the Baltimore Ravens showed was we're better than that Cleveland Browns defense. Don't kid yourself. They sent a message with that victory. And I think if you're Mahomes, you don't think about that because you're Patrick Mahomes. You're not CJ Stroud. CJ Stroud's going to be a very good quarterback in the NFL, but he's not there yet. Patrick Mahomes has done it many times before. Lamar Jackson is calling this a heavyweight matchup. I believe it. Two good defenses. The Ravens obviously have the better defense. Two really good quarterbacks. Lamar Jackson, if you look at his play this year, should have the edge, but Patrick Mahomes is still Patrick Mahomes. I think this is going to be such a good matchup, and I think the NFL is frothing at the mouth of what the ratings will be for this one.
It'll be a good one, and I got to tell you, we'll move to the next step because we've got a couple of minutes left. I've got my heart says the Chiefs, but my brain says the other, and I'm just dying to see how this turns out. We're going to see one. The Buffalo game was awesome. I have a feeling the Raven game is going to be even better.
I think we're in for a great weekend of football. Like the four teams that are there, not surprised that they're there. Really, if you think about it.
Yeah, I know they earned the right to be there.
They're like, yeah, as a Cowboys fan, I would have loved to have seen the Cowboys in this situation, but I mean, you can't discredit what these football teams have done to get to where they are.
And we talked about the Lions, a little bit about the 49ers. This is a team that has come back with a fury this year. The question is, I think in both these games this weekend, David, it's going to matter how quickly a team starts. That I'm not suggesting that one team's going to get a fast start and the other one isn't. I'm saying that I think a fast start is going to be really important here for both teams to have a quick start. We've seen that in the playoffs this year. If there was something that a familiar tone that we've seen in these playoffs, having a fast start means you have a great chance of winning in this year's NFL playoffs.
Establishing yourself really in the game, right? Like the Lions going to want to establish running the football because if you run the football, that makes your play action that much better, and you get a little bit of you force the 49ers to decide, are you going to defend the pass or are you going to stack the box against the run? You make them think a little bit more.
The ground game has made a comeback in this year's playoffs.
Yeah, and like the ground game has always been important, right? But I think when you look at how these teams all operate, all four of these teams have really good running games. Now Baltimore's a little different. Theirs is theirs is with
Quarterback.
a quarterback that leads the team in rushing. Had over 100. He is the first quarterback. I don't know if you. I wrote about this. First quarterback to throw for 100 yards, rush for 100 yards, throw 2 touchdown passes, and to have 2 rushing touchdowns in a playoff game or anything in any NFL game. Incredible. He's the true all-in-one quarterback, Lamar Jackson.
He's
Patrick Mahomes now has Isaiah Pacheco that he can rely on to make his life a little easier. So if you're the Ravens, Isaiah Pacheco is going to be the guy to really look at here. And if you're the Chiefs, you got to make Lamar Jackson beat you through the air, which is going to be tough because he's doing that as well, but not to the success that maybe other quarterbacks are. If you're the Lions, you know who you're going after on the 49ers. That's their MVP and Christian McCaffrey. And even for the Lions and for the 49ers, you look at the Lions, it's like Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery, the 1-2 punch in the backfield. If we force Jared Goff to have to throw the ball 40 times in this game, I think you like your chances of beating Goff and hoping Goff has to be the one to beat you.
Baltimore and their quarterback, Buffalo's quarterback, proved to KC that they could run against KC. That's not a good sign coming the next week because, not that I'm not demeaning Josh Allen when I say Lamar is a bit as tough as tough as Josh Allen is. Lamar is maybe not next level, but he's equal or a bit better.
I think, he just hasn't had the roster around him in those big moments.
Yeah.
He really hasn't had the moment to show what he can really do. He hasn't really had the team, the supporting cast around to show what he can do as well. Like this is the best of Lamar Jackson because this is the best that's been around him.
That's the amazing thing, that he has run like he has out of winning to win, to make sure they can win, and to know that he doesn't have those other options and still run like he does and have the record of running that he has. That's what makes him so special and such a threat, to Kansas City. Now, maybe Kansas City can key on him a little more, but still, we saw Josh Allen break through a lot of tackles in that game. I think Lamar Jackson could do the same thing.
Probably. You want to get rid of pressure from the pass rush. Kansas City has a good pass rush. Josh Allen didn't get sacked, but he came close a few times.
Yep.
Get yourself out of the pocket. Kansas City is going to want to keep Lamar Jackson in that pocket. He's not going to give him the opportunity. He's going to decide very early when he wants to stay in the pocket and when he wants to get out. And that's going to be tough.
Well, I'm going to go with my heart on this one for both. I'm going to call a Super Bowl between the Chiefs and the Lions. My brain is saying, you dummy, stop it. But I'm going to go with that. I'm going to go with my heart, and I'm going to go Chiefs and Lions. And I'm going to say that's going to be a pretty good Super Bowl. Who do you have going into the bowl?
I still think it's the Ravens and 49ers.
Well, okay, so we totally agree.
I'm not as confident about the 49ers as I was a few weeks ago. I think the 49ers, it's going to come down to the wire for them.
And we'll remind folks, I still don't know, maybe I missed it, but there still isn't a defensive coordinator for the Argos.
No, they're still not a defensive coordinator. They hired some new coaches, defensive line coach and a running backs coach, but there's still no defensive coordinator. I think they're mulling their options right now.
Yeah, we might as well end the show with a CFL bit of news. And it's going to be an interesting season in the Canadian Football League as well. As we said earlier in the show, free agency's coming up, the draft soon after that. And we're really into there's a fair bit to keep track of. And I apologize to the CFL fans if we paid too much attention to the NFL. But it is an important time for football in North America and in the NFL specifically. These are the best of times to be a football fan when you get to this point in the season, it's amazing, and it's wonderful that the games live up to the hype. We've seen that this far. I'm not one of those people who cheers for the NFL to suffer just because I think it benefits the Canadian Football League. I like to see good football, and the NFL right now has that going on. And if you love football, the NFL is where it's happening. So there's nothing wrong with checking that out.
No, not at all.
Well, David, this was fun. You got a final comment you want to toss out there?
Just enjoy the football this weekend, folks.
Okay, that sounds like a deal. So for David Morassutti, I'm Candid Frank Stanisci. Thank you for watching CFL Football Talk, airing live Mondays at 9 p.m. We postponed it a little bit. It's that time of year. This show can also be heard on the Spanglish World Network for CFL Football Talk. News, entertainment, and other sports programming we offer. Please check out SpanglishWorld.ca. Spanglish World. Watch it, hear it, read it, download it, and live it. Thanks for watching, everybody. I'm Candid Frank, and don't forget Candid Frank Stanisci on YouTube. Subscribe, enjoy, and thank you.